be out of here like a rocket. One. I gotta be down.
Good. Welcome to our special edition today of Dracut Connection. I'm your host for today, Gordy Scott, and I have two very special guests with us today, Philippe Thibault and John Zimini, former selectman John Zimini. So guys, what's been new? We're live today from Old Home Day here in Dracut. It's a beautiful day, a little cloudy, but it's beautiful outside. It's about 79 degrees. And so Phil, we got you out of retirement, so to speak.
Semi-retirement.
Semi-retirement.
It's
so what's new with you, Phil?
It's a Saturday and Old Home Day, so break away from the drafting boards and come and visit and such. And
did you have any fried dough or?
I have not yet. I just got here a little while ago and stopped by the DATV studio van and figured I'd check in and saw you and figured,
That's
well,
right.
we're going to have a taping. Let's be on.
And on my left is a good friend of mine and my mentor, if you so to speak, John Zimini. He is doing us a great honor, visiting us up from the South Shore. So, John, what's been new with your life? How have you been feeling? I know.
First of all, Gordy, you guys had to really scrape the bottom of the barrel to have me come back today. And I knew that Brian Bond wasn't going to be here, so it would be a good opportunity to come here and maybe bash him a little bit,
Sure, we can do
and
that.
and absolutely bash his Mountain Man show a little bit, because he's not here, and we're not going to have the pleasure of having to hear about all of those escapades. Sleepy time. No, for me
He is
it's sleepy
supposed to
time.
be in Pittsburgh, New Hampshire.
But he is
though,
in
for me.
Pittsburgh, New Hampshire.
So,
I
what
did
have you
talk
been up
him
to
last night.
since you left Dracut, John? Can you fill the viewers
Yeah,
in?
well,
What have been up to?
I've been acclimating to the South Shore, so to speak. It's a lot different than being on what we perceive as being the North Shore, and it's certainly a whole different atmosphere for me than being in Dracut, because Dracut is like my hometown. It's certainly my second hometown, because having been originally from Chelsea, but I mean, spent 21 years here. You make a lot of friends, you make a lot of acquaintances, and having the honor of serving on the Board of Selectmen here for 3 terms was quite an accomplishment for me to do, and made a lot of friends. It's good to come back and say hello. I walk through and I can't make it through without stopping every 2 feet, saying hi to people, because I'm glad they still remember me. I've only been out a year, but it seems like a long time.
So, John, you know this show likes to break news here in Dracut.
Right.
So there is a rumor going around, and I wanna put it to bed. Rest, or
Right.
is it true? Is there any truth to the fact that John Zimini may be coming back to Dracut?
I will not confirm, nor will I deny any of those
Okay.
rumors.
All right. So it could be true, but it may not be true, is what you're saying.
I will not confirm or deny, and you can ask me that question any number of ways you want to ask, and the answer will be the same.
Well, I'll put it this way. I'm sure a lot of people have said, "You coming back to Dracut, John?" as you're walking up.
Oh, absolutely. And I will say this: there are some nice, very interesting condo developments coming into town.
Oh, yeah. So
You never know.
Oh, well, that's good.
And there's also an assisted living, but you never know. I mean, which is a great addition to the town, the assisted living.
Yeah, that place is coming up nice. The walls are starting to go up.
I went down there. I joined Phil and a couple of other friends for coffee this morning at my old haunt, the Dunkin' Donuts on Broadway Road, and I noticed it sprung up like right from out of the weeds. It's coming along. It's going to be a boom for the town of Dracut. I think it's a great thing. It's awesome.
Well, as on the show, as we always do, we talk politics. So there's a lot of stuff happening in Dracut over the past few weeks. One of the big things that has happened recently is the fire department audit came out. So I think it was in the paper. There were some articles in the newspaper. It was, I think, overall favorable, the fire department audit. However, there was some I think infighting within some of the survey at the end of the fire report, the audit report, and so what do you guys have to? What do you guys?
Gordy, I do keep up with Dracut politics, believe it or not, because I'm still very much interested in it, and some of my friends are still quite involved. And from what I've read and seen about the report, it's a very good report in some aspects. In other aspects, as usual, there's going to be some.
Room for improvement, right?
Room for improvement, yeah. Now, the stuff that they're arguing about, the political people are arguing about, is the anonymous comments being made by members of the rank and file. Well, that's a standard in the industry when you do these assessments. You don't want retribution put upon anyone that might want to speak their mind. So you really need to look at those statements, and then you have to weigh whether or not you believe they're true or not. And you know what? People in town know what is true and what isn't true. And the people in politics, whether they want to admit it or not, they know exactly what is true and what is fiction. And you need to address it. Now that it's in the open, the manager's going to have a good look at what he's going to try to direct that department and where to go and fix it. But the politics of it is when you got a guy like Joe Dracut, who's been out of the service for 15 years and still wants to run the department. And he wants to tell you that, you know, it's a horrible thing to have the rank and file talk about the management. Well, that's just the fact of life. I was a manager, and I knew.
That's how you improve, right?
That's
you
how
get
you
feedback
improve.
from the employees,
Right.
and then you hopefully
And if you
make
don't
some
have that
change.
communication line open, then you're living in a cloud, and you're doomed. If you don't want to open up and change, you have to change.
So
My issue, I suppose, overall, I haven't read the report. I hear it's a fairly decent
Yeah.
report.
it's 310 pages, I
Well,
believe.
and that's the problem with it, is that they released all this essentially raw data, the surveys that were
Right.
done anonymously. That's information that should have never been in the report.
I think they could have done the summary piece. You know, they could
Exactly.
have summarized what was in there and then just
Because
withheld
without the ability to analyze that raw data, it just becomes a horror show. I had a client that said to me when I was designing our house, I don't want to see the vacuum marks on the carpets when I vacuum. Now that's raw data. What does that mean to somebody who's designing a house? I mean, to me, it said a particular way that she wanted to live. She wanted things in place and orderly. But for somebody just looking at, oh, she doesn't want to see the marks in the rug. Okay, we'll do a low pile rug or carpet in her house, like a commercial carpet, and then she won't see them. That's not what she was saying.
Right.
So I mean, if you can't analyze the raw data, if you just look at it for what it is,
Right.
you're going to go off on the wrong tangent.
Now, I think one of the biggest takeaways I had, and I think we've known this as a town for a while, is that we need more staff in the fire department. They talked about specifically in the report about a SAFER grant that we can apply for, which I think goes for 2 or 3 years, so we can hire 4 to 8 firefighters for a couple of years, and then after those couple of years, the town would have to pick up the expenses for that.
And I think that's a good stopgap measure. And people will say, well, afterwards you're going to have to own those. Well, you know what? Before you get to the end of that 3 years, you're going to have probably the same amount of people retiring or leaving the department. So you're going to save money by not having to put more people out to school during that time. So you're always going to have an attrition problem.
Right.
So that debunks that whole thing. I think you take the money whenever you can get it. You know, you mentioned about being short-staffed in police and fire and schools and DPW. This is not unique to Dracut.
Right.
It's every city in town. I mean, in my town of Abington, there's been recently some talk about how low the police force is in our town. There's supposed to be like 40 people, they're down to 27. So you figure that out. I mean, it's budget constraints, and it's the management of the town as well as your political management of the town, whether or not you want to do anything to make that better. And talk is cheap. Putting the money on the table and making things happen costs.
So I'm interested to get both of your point of views, a former selectman and a hopefully soon to be
Hopefully, yes.
selectman.
I was in the firefighters golf outing
Yeah.
fairly recently, and one of the firefighters says, "Aren't you a selectman?"
Uh-huh.
And I said, "No, the town doesn't want me to be."
Not yet.
And another firefighter says, "That's not true, Phil."
So I just want to get your thoughts, as you just brought up, John, you alluded to, is that the town we're short on finances, right?
Right.
So do you have any ideas that you can share with the town, both of you? What do you think what we can do to raise more money to get these people, the
Well,
staff that we need?
First of all, you're not going to raise more money through the taxpayers. And I think that's proven in Dracut for years, until you take and make some hard choices. Hey, our representative just sort of jump right in there.
Yeah, we got Colleen, Gary.
And I'll continue while you.
I lost
while you,
track of time.
That's okay. The bottom line is you're not going to get to that point of raising money, and I think people would be generous to raise their taxes if they knew that you were doing the things that you need to do to make you leaner first.
So
And
what
I
are
don't
your
think they
thoughts?
do
Do you
that.
think that what we could do in town is, do you think doing a split tax rate is the right thing to do? What, do you have any ideas what we can do to get some of this money, John?
I think Jim Duggan, who is an absolute tremendous manager, and if anybody thinks otherwise, you're living on some other planet. Because this guy is making things happen, is doing things in town, and I keep up with it by reading the papers and going online and talking to people in town. And I think if you do nothing, you're going to have no waves. If you're a manager that's making moves or making things happen, you're going to step on some people's toes who don't want their toes to be stepped on, and they're going to make noise. So I see Jim Duggan as a real good person who's going to take this town into the future on solid ground,
Well,
if they let him do it.
His economic plan that he's putting together, the
It
website
takes time,
is
but
great.
he's already
Yeah.
doing it. He's already well ahead of where he might have been if he had more cooperation.
And Phil, what are your thoughts on raising some more income for the town, basically?
Well,
to hire these people?
when I ran for selectman, I think there were a few items that I had suggested, and there's some, I believe what would be referred to as excess property owned by the town that we should look at and sell that off. I mean, there's the old fire station in the Navy Yard. There's a problem with the fire station in Collinsville right now. I've located a lot that they could put a new fire station on, and they're proceeding with that. There's still a study that needs to be done for it, but okay, you can sell off the Collinsville fire station. There's the Kenwood fire station that's still being owned by the town, and most of these buildings are just holding signs for the DPW. They're storage buildings. It's like get them back and
Phil,
producing tax.
those are all great things, and now it'll be almost 12 years ago, 10 years ago, 11 years ago when I first ran, those were all issues that I had brought up back then. Because Dracut doesn't like that kind of change. And you need cooperation on the school committee to do that and to get that administration building is a white elephant, and it should be sold. It should have been sold years ago, and it should be sold now. Where the economy's getting better, you can get more money for it, and you can have a good infusion of money into the schools. But we have our representative here.
I am so sorry for being late.
That's
I
okay.
And my
Colleen,
good
let us congratulate you on your big primary win.
Thank you,
You
thank
beat
you.
the blanks, as Phil said.
Yeah, we got 82% of the vote, so that's
Excellent.
good.
Wow.
It's, it was a good day. It was nice to actually not have to be out doing what I need, what I've had to do in the last, I don't know how many elections.
Right.
This is only my third time out of 12 elections being unopposed, so I'm enjoying that.
Well, Colleen, for you, it's a never-ending campaign. Right. You're always out there, so it's not a matter of whether or not you have an opponent or not. She's always doing something.
Colleen is always out at events and
to do things. So
I give you a lot of credit because you're
you.
always out there doing something, especially for the kids.
Thank
I know my son's a senior now, but I know I was at the high school. You're there for everything.
I was at the football game last night.
Oh, I wasn't there. I heard it was a pretty
21-18.
Oh,
it was
so-
very close,
wow, that was really
and
good.
we lost our quarterback partway through. He was injured. It was a very long removal of him from the field, so we think it's pretty serious. Haven't heard the final outcome of that, but the good thing is I was extremely happy. The band is back going to away games, which they
good.
haven't done for several years. I was actually sitting in the bleachers, and when the band came out of the bus, and somebody went, "Oh, the band's here," and it was nice. It creates that whole event, and those kids work hard too. And so for them to only have been able to play the home games, and our first home game is not until October 7th, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So they wouldn't even get on the field until then to play before somebody. So they were there again. The cheerleaders were fantastic. The kids, the football players were great, and it was a good game. It was competitive. So hopefully that's positive things for us.
So, Colleen, what's next for you? Like, where are you going? What are you doing in the next few months before November?
Well, we're keeping very, very busy. We have the Mapule Park. Your brother-in-law Johnny's been helping us with that. Phil's helped us with it. John's been doing it long distance. We are going to do a ribbon cut, a dedication on November 5th, and we just found out the governor is coming up for it.
Wow.
So
That's awesome.
November 5th at 1 o'clock. Unfortunately, all the plantings won't be in, all of that. they want to, actually the new DPW director was there at our meeting and talked about the ground settling and all that and getting it to grade and so forth. So we'll have to wait to plant next year.
Yeah, that would be in the spring.
Yeah. So, but we're going to dedicate it anyway. It's been a long time coming, and life's too short. We're not going to wait any longer. We're going to dedicate the stone, so November 5th. In the meantime, also working on some things for Mike Bladis.
Right.
He's a dedicated, lifelong Dracut resident, a veteran, a Dracut High grad, a longtime assessor and water district clerk, and then selectman. Did he serve with you?
He didn't serve with me. No,
No.
he was
Prior
a
to you?
selectman for one term. Yeah. He was on the board of selectmen. Yep. In fact, here's a guy that had $1 million go back to the taxpayers. He made the motion to give $1 million back to the taxpayers. Lost the next election.
Yeah.
Wow.
Figure that one out.
Yeah.
Figure that one out. Huh?
He's an amazing guy. Raised his family here, and he was one of the ones that helped to get the money donated for the sign for Dr. Deulis.
Yep.
And led that to honor that man who had served 50 years as superintendent. He's been a lifelong active resident of a member of the American Legion, having served in the Army.
Lifelong Democrat.
Lifelong Democrat who has worked on numerous campaigns.
Unbelievable
So,
amount of campaigns.
Yeah. So, and he's the type of guy I'll never forget. Before I worked for Johnny Cox many years ago, I was in the assessor's office and the selectman's office, just on a summer job, and I got to know Mike really then at that point. And every young child that came in, he'd give her a dollar. And here's a guy that was working 3 jobs to raise his 6 kids and support the family. And then I remember Moose Morowski was another assessor, and they're dear friends. And Moose came back from lunch with him one day and said, "Oh, that Bladis." And I said, what? He goes, "We went down to the Olympia to have lunch." He says, "He sees this homeless guy on the side of the road. He gives him a 20. I said, "Yeah, that's good. That's a good thing." He goes, "He only had the 20. I had to buy lunch."
Typical Bladis.
Well, it looks like we're starting to get a
Yeah.
little bit of rain here. Hopefully the rain holds
Yeah.
off. But let's change topics a little bit. Let's talk about what's going to be on the ballot in November, and specifically the
Sure.
3 questions. And
Yeah.
now that we have Colleen here, I'd like to also get her thoughts on what
Yeah.
she thinks of the questions.
Sure.
The first question on the ballot is for an additional slot license for the state. What say you guys? Phil, we'll start
Gambling
with you.
slots you're talking
Yeah,
about.
gambling
Gambling
slots.
slots. I mean, I guess that's a good thing. I mean, I'm not all that keen on gambling being a source of revenue for the taxpayer, because that can fluctuate tremendously. And, but I mean,
Would you support it? You think?
I would support it. If people want to go and gamble, that's their right to do so. And
My question to anybody who makes that kind of an argument, Phil, and I'm for the additional slots. My question would be, what are you getting now?
Right.
So any additional revenue you're going to get is good revenue. See, that's the problem is that, and I'm not knocking Phil for that. It's a legitimate concern. The bottom line is, you're going to have to do some innovative things to get more revenue in that doesn't hit the taxpayer in the pocket that are on fixed incomes. And as you know, Colleen, we are all aging,
Yes.
and the population is getting older than younger. And the older you get, the less money you have, because obviously you're on fixed income. So I want less focus on hitting those pocketbooks and more focus on trying to raise money where people go to you to take.
yeah, I mean, most of the revenue comes from discretionary spending. So I
Exactly.
mean, it's not a bad place to be raising tax money. I
So
suppose.
I'm for more casino stuff.
Colleen,
I'm
what's
going
your
to have
thoughts?
to be against this one, because when we created gambling in Massachusetts with the casino bill, it was specifically negotiated out as to how many, so that it wouldn't draw too much
Right,
from
I
the
remember that,
lottery, to make it so that it would be competitive. If you have too many of them, then they may not survive. And so there was an agreement to have 3 in the state, and to have them in specific areas. And,
Now, are they selected now? There's one down near Foxborough, right?
There's one down near Foxborough. There's supposed to be
Springfield?
once. It hasn't been. I think it. I'm not really sure, but there were supposed to be 3 and divided out within the Commonwealth so that they could be competitive. So that, and we're looking for the one in the Everett
Everett
and
area.
Boston
yeah.
area. So it has taken a while for it to actually get going. But I think that I would ask people to vote no on that, to try to give the existing program, let it get started.
Well, I somewhat agree with you, because if you have another one, a fourth one, where are you going to put it?
Right.
I mean, unless it's somewhere maybe in the Merrimack Valley where it's kind of in the middle, but I just don't know where you would.
And there was a
physically
long
put it.
time they were talking about
Worcester.
Salisbury. The Salisbury wanted it. Salisbury wanted it, and then they actually voted that they didn't want it.
Yeah.
So, you know, everybody's all in favor of it until it's in their backyard, and then all of a sudden they don't want it. You know, obviously we saw Boston fighting what was going on in Everett and so forth. But that, just let me get back to Mike Bladis. We're going to do an event for him on October 21st, because he's suffering from cancer right now. You'll see him and he'll never
what date
tell
is
you.
that?
October 21st is a Friday night. It's a $10 party at the American Legion. And we're asking people, because this brought it right back to it, we're asking people to bring a scratch ticket. Because Michael is known for liking his Keno and his scratch tickets. So
Okay.
that
sounds
so
like a
falls
great
right
event.
in line with
Right.
that.
And it's the right thing. It's the right thing to do.
And I think you will all agree that we have two more questions to discuss, but with the presidential election, I think the turnout's going to be huge.
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 Big. It'll
Right,
be
John?
Huge.
Okay.
As my good friend Donald Trump would say.
Right.
Huge.
So moving on to question 2 is concerning the charter schools and giving more money, basically. From the way I understand it, it's taking a little bit of money from the public education and giving it to the charter schools. Phil, what say you?
To be honest, I really haven't made up my mind fully on that. I'm leaning towards yes on it, to raising the cap. And
So
But-
you could be
I
swayed
could,
either
I
way?
could probably be swayed either way, but you know, like I said, I'm leaning towards the. I believe the yes is to raise the cap.
Yes.
So
John, what do you say?
I'm a yes, and the reason I'm a yes is charter schools are there for a very good reason, to make schools better.
Right.
And I think that that the competition within the public school systems, because they're both public schools, should be greater to do better, so that they can all prosper. And I would be yes on that.
Colleen, what do you say?
And I'm the no.
I figured.
I'm a Democrat. I'm supposed to be in the majority of things. I think when there's finite dollars, you don't spread it even further, and that we've got an issue where there's not a lot of control for the charter schools. They either are created in your community, which is one thing, but when they all of a sudden move from Chelmsford to Tingsboro and now attracting the students and the money away from Dracut, I don't know how we can make Dracut better if the money is not there to do so. And it's just, you know, money is taken out by the VOC, money's taken out by the charter schools, and then Dracut's left with what's
Right.
left over. So
Right.
I would be a no. That I think that we need to have the same rules and regulations for all schools, charters included, and we need to realize that we only have finite money. And by creating these optional schools, the money's being drained, and we need to be able to make them better, and it needs money. And
Right, and I think that's a big problem. Colleen brings up a good point, but if you look at the state of Wisconsin,
Yep.
their wonderful governor there got rid of the teachers unions, and my sister-in-law happens to be a teacher in the state, and she was all upset. But
Yeah.
actually, 2 years later, she's actually happy with it now.
Really.
That she's not in the union now. They can work extra hours. They don't have to do certain things. So I'm personally against the unions, the school unions. So I'm hoping that this passes.
You're not running for anything
No, I'm
in
not.
the near future.
No.
I didn't think so. You probably sealed your doom right there
Right,
with that.
exactly. No, but I just think it's a good thing. The problem, I think what will happen if this does pass is you'll see more children going to the charter schools, and then the public schools will, I think, basically collapse. I don't know what will happen.
You know, that's to me, that's a weak argument, because the public schools have been around for a long time, and they're going to continue to be around. I think the government, and Colleen makes a lot of good points on her end, and they're very cogent, but there's not a real commitment from Washington on what to do with public schools. You know, the commitment is leave it to the states, but then they regulate you to death.
Right.
And
all those regulations come with no dollars, but cost money. So the bottom line is, somebody in Washington has got to wake up and say, if we're going to regulate it and it's going to cost money, we're going to pay for it. And until that happens, you're going to have a continuing problem, no matter whether there's charter schools or not.
I think that's a very good point, because I mean, it's a matter of, if you want to call it mission creep for education,
Right.
that a little more is added to it, and it just eats away at the dollars. There was a very famous architect, Frank Lloyd Wright, and he had a client
from?
Wisconsin, as a
Yes.
matter of fact. And he had a client who said that Frank Lloyd Wright had an unlimited budget and he exceeded it. And are we having that problems with schools too, that essentially they have a desire for an unlimited budget and they can still exceed it?
Yeah.
I mean, I was talking with somebody and they were talking about, with the sports in particular, how they wanted the students to have a high school experience. And I said to them, we're supposed to give them an education. We don't have to give them an experience. I mean, you know, how far does it go? How far do you have to keep providing? And that becomes a big problem for the school's budgets.
I think that's the union coming to get Gordy.
The Ghostbusters.
But you're right in a lot of ways. You're right. But the bottom line is that if we're going to continue to regulate, over-regulate, we're going to continue to take away dollars from the classroom. And part of the union problem is taking dollars away from. I'm a union person. I believe in unions. I believe in their foundation. But some of the things that they've gone to now is making it unrealistic for anybody to survive, whether it be police, fire, or schools, to survive in the long run, because they're just asking for so much, and most of it goes to paying administrators and not the classroom teacher. I mean, my daughter's a teacher, so I got to be careful. But I don't think she's really into the union thing yet. But the bottom line is she will be, as long as sooner or later she will be. But the bottom line is there has to be a delicate balance between, making sure that the teachers are paid adequately, and that the administrators aren't overly paid. And you have that. I mean, in my town alone, where I'm now living, there's only 3,000 students in the entire town, and the superintendent makes $151. That to me is just unbelievable.
Right.
Just unbelievable. You know, they make that kind of money, $151,000.
So we have the tractors coming in. So
I think that's Warren Shaw just trying to disrupt Brian Vaughn's show. You know.
All right. So moving on to the last question. Speaking of farming. Is to legalize marijuana for those over 21 years of age. Phil,
Well,
again,
that's
start with you.
essentially for recreational use, and I would say absolutely not. I mean, I'm in
Is there
favor.
any benefit for this? I mean, John brought up a point where we need more revenue for the state, and maybe we can.
That's
put
That's
some
not the
tax
kind of
on-
revenue.
That's
you need,
looking for trouble.
That's just not the. That
I mean,
is-
let's put it this way: when medical marijuana was first being brought about, the proponents of that would say, "There's no way we're looking for recreational marijuana."
Yeah,
And
right.
as soon as the medical was passed, I mean, the very next day they're putting together a petition for recreational.
They say, well, you've already done recreation. What's the
It's-
difference, right?
I mean, if you're going to do recreational marijuana, why not do recreational heroin?
You're right.
I mean, it could be done safely in low doses, and I'm
legalize drugs.
sure you could get a doctor to agree with very low doses it could be done safely.
Yeah, exactly.
So no, it's
All
a
right,
case.
John.
Yeah, I'm totally against it. Totally against it for all of the same reasons that Phil just said, and even more. I mean, the social aspect of it, the stuff that's going to cost the medical community because of what this leads to, and it's proven it leads to other things. It's just I'm totally against it. I mean, it's as bad as cigarette smoking. I'm totally against cigarette smoking.
Well,
and the health benefits or the health problems that are created from that are tantamount to what
I just think of,
cigarettes.
you go out to eat at a restaurant, right, with your wife. I go with my wife, and then I walk outside, and then you'll have people
You have to walk
smoking
through that.
a joint.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sitting outside.
Absolutely.
So, Colleen, I'm assuming you're.
I'm with them. I'm against it.
Go!
we all agree on something.
We've got
Yeah.
unanimity here.
Yeah, and you know what? When you say that, so many people think we're trying to take away the medical marijuana,
No.
and we're not. There is a specific need for that, and they've proven it, and it works for some patients, and absolutely. But yeah, I don't think we need another thing clouding the minds of people. We have enough drug problems out there. We don't have to add to it, and I don't think we need to condone it with our children.
All right,
Yeah,
well,
very good.
that covers the questions for November. So let's bring it back. Let's change topics a little bit. Bring it back to local politics.
Do you have to run? Or you?
Do you have to
I'm
run?
all right.
Okay,
All
great.
right.
Yep.
Great.
So
So
coming
if
up
I
at the
throw a
next.
couple bombs, you won't feel uncomfortable. Go ahead.
So at the next selectmen's
That's why
meeting,
we're on the ends.
at the next selectmen's meeting, they'll be discussing the town manager's review. So I'm really excited, if you will, from a talk show
Right.
analysis standpoint, because I think this is going to be good TV.
Yep.
I'm really interested to see what's going to happen with his review. And John, you spoke about this at the beginning of the show a little bit. I think he's doing a great job. I mean, I don't agree with everything he does, but I think he cuts through the politics.
Yep.
He cuts through all the crap, and he gets done when he needs to get done.
If you're going to ask me first, then I'm going to shoot a couple bullets here.
Okay.
First of all, I love the guy. I think he's a tremendous manager. I think he's a go-getter. He's not going to let any grass grow under his feet. He's going to be moving constantly to improve this town. That's why I voted for him. That's why when we had him as candidates, he rose right to the top of my books, and I sought him out and wanted him to come here as quickly as possible, because he is exactly what we needed after 26 years of slumber with Dennis Peendeck. Dennis Peendeck was a great manager in terms of managing the finances and keeping things down and keeping things under control. And I said the entire time I knew Dennis, if I had $1 million, I'd want him to manage it, because he wouldn't lose a penny of it.
Right.
And he'd probably grow it a little bit. But what Dennis didn't do is grow the budget enough in terms of economic development and other things to expand the revenue base that wasn't going to hit your taxes. And I think that this guy is going to do that, and he's going to ruffle some feathers. And if he's not ruffling some feathers, then he's in a slumber, and then we'd have a problem. I will say this, that if I was here, I would have already had several fights with him. I would have had several arguments with him, but it would have been based on the decisions on certain issues. And I'm not really going to get into what they are, but there would have been several that I would have already went after him. But there are far more that I would have supported for him, and I'll stand shoulder to shoulder with him, no matter what he did in terms of those. But
so Colleen, do you have any comments?
I think he's doing a great job, and I have worked with him since day one when he came in. He, people think he's an outsider or whatever. From day one, he's bought Dracut shirts and worn Dracut shirts around, and immersed himself in this community, willing to do a dunk tank if he needed to. So I think that he is one of the things that I like is he's willing to talk to any citizen.
Is he in the dunk tank today? Because I'll go down there and throw some.
I think there was a talk that if he got so many people on the Old Home Day committee, he would go in the dunk tank.
Oh.
So I don't know.
A lot of people were asking if you were going on it, John.
Yeah.
I've been in that dunk tank, believe me, and we raised some money.
But he will, if any citizen has an issue, he will meet with them, regardless. They don't have to be an elected official, whatever. If it's important to them, he will meet with them, and I've seen it numerous times. We've worked on things when we were working on the pipeline, if it was coming forward, what was going to happen, if they were going to do this, the compressor station there. And I saw him first and foremost mention the names of the neighbors. Oh no, we have to worry about them, and we have to worry about Mr. or Mrs. He really truly does care. I happen to mention that Mike Bilatus was in the hospital. Next thing I know, he's over there visiting him. He really has, and I've seen him. He's come to Boston. He's asked for meetings with different people, parts of the administration, and to be honest, he's really shown true emotion and love for this community. So, he may not have won every vote at different town meetings, but he's bringing in that assisted living program. He said he was going to.
That's great, yeah.
He worked on the Mass Works grant to get that intersection done, to get them here, and work with Barbara Italian and I. And one thing I like is he's constantly texting back and forth if there's an issue. He's not hard to find. You just, even though it's Saturday morning, Sunday night, you text him, he's texting you back. So he's a real hands-on guy, and he's delivering.
Phil, what are your thoughts?
Overall, I think he's done a very good job. Economic development, he got that assisted living facility to come back to Dracut, take another look at it. And
it's going up, the walls are going up.
Yeah. I've heard from some of the citizens in the town that they sometimes find him very brusque in conversations with them. It could be, but of course, you're used to these people are used to Dennis Peendeck, who was here for 27 years or so, and so certainly within 2 years, you're still having this transition period. So it's getting used to how people talk with each other and stuff. Overall, he's done an excellent job as far as I can see. I don't agree with him on everything either, but if I was a selectman, I wouldn't want to have to agree with him on everything, because essentially I would be the town manager.
You shouldn't be.
He's going to have different opinions. Right. You have to be able to look at them, listen to them, and weigh what they're saying from a professional standpoint, and say, and then step back from your own thoughts and say, is that the best? Am I only thinking my idea is good because it's my idea?
Right.
And if you can separate yourself from that, and then look at the both discussions, then you have things progressing.
Well, now begs the question, and I don't know if you were going to go here, but I'm going to go there. What is the Board of Selectmen going to do on this evaluation? If
That's
they
my
do,
point.
If
I think
they do anything less than give him glowing reviews, it's political, and they're looking to get rid of him. And that is because he's doing things, and he's probably stepping on some toes that aren't liking it. But the bottom line is, I will predict to you that Joe Dracut will more than likely try to make pressure on him and force some of his colleagues to come along with him. I hope they do not succumb to that kind of Dracut politics. Let this man do what he has to do. Do not succumb to Joe Dracut's disdain for not having total control over the manager. And that's what he wants.
I did hear Selectman Dracut, to be fair, on a certain Saturday morning radio show, and he was hammering the town manager.
You know, Colleen's sitting here, and she's and I don't want to put her in a bad position, so I won't say anything about that Saturday morning puke show. But what did he say?
No, but he was very adamant against the town manager. He didn't think that.
Yeah, of course. Because you know why? He's
that
got 2
report-
years. I think he's got 2 years remaining on his term.
Yeah, so he's this
2
year.
years?
He's up next.
A year and a
So,
half, essentially.
so
a year and a half.
guaranteed, he's going to try to do something to either make him leave or force him to leave, so that he can have his hands in who the next new manager will be.
And that's what I.
And that would be a disaster.
Right.
The
That would be a
last
disaster.
time they had essentially a rating for the town manager, he gave him fairly poor marks.
Poor marks.
Ones and twos on a scale of 4.
And he will do that again.
But the biggest problem with that is that he never made comments associated with them. So how would you expect your employee to improve
Right.
if you give them no indication on why you think they're lacking? And so I mean, I would discount those comments and those grades from Joe just on that regard. Just throw them out.
Unfortunately, you have to have somebody write them for him. So, and he doesn't, he's not quick enough on his feet to do that stuff. But the bottom line is,
So that'll be interesting. That's coming up.
Gordy, what do you think of the town manager?
yeah.
Well, I think he's doing a great job. I sit on the Recreation Commission, for those of you that don't know, and we've had some disagreements with the different sports associations within the town. He's trying to do the right. I think he's trying to do the right thing in his heart. He's doing the right thing. He's charging like the Pop Warner organization, the soccer association, fees to use the fields, which I don't
That I
totally
wouldn't agree with. I wouldn't
don't
agree
agree
with
with
that,
that. But
charging
he's
them.
taking that money. He's putting it aside for the Dadak property to possibly use that in the future. So maybe it's the right thing. I don't know. I just personally didn't agree with it. And then the other thing I didn't agree with him is, as you know, that's very close and dear to my heart, is the skateboard park.
I was hoping you'd go there. Now, for full disclosure,
Yes.
they looked for people to come down and work that park, to be monitors for the park. They couldn't find anybody.
Right.
Gordy's wife stood up and took it and went.
Because she felt bad.
And
She
she
really
felt bad,
she
so
felt-
she's doing it. And there's a couple other people that have stepped up that they had to really drag out
Right.
to put in that position. Bottom line is, that park was a disaster on day one. I supported it early on, but right after that was built and there was major problems in there, I was ready to close it. And it should have been closed a long time ago. It's a waste of money, it's a waste of space, and it shouldn't have even been where it is.
And I know that Lori Cahill is going to go and speak in front of the selectmen. It might be in a month or so. Just because we haven't had it. I think we've had one person the whole year. and
That's
we've
ridiculous.
We've spent $7,000 or $8,000.
Ridiculous.
It just, to me, if you're not going to have it in an open park, and you should not have to have a monitor
No.
sitting there.
Well, I've said it on this particular show a number of times. Mr. Selectman, tear down that fence.
There you go. And,
I mean,
and I would say, Mr. Selectman, close that park, sell that property, sell
Well, what they wanted to do
the
is.
equipment off,
Yep.
and do something for
And,
the sports there.
I was on the skateboard subcommittee, and what we decided, we called Pelham,
Yeah.
because Pelham has a beautiful skateboard
Right.
park. They said they were going to buy it. It wasn't a lot of money,
Right.
but they were going to come and take it all out
Awesome.
and put it at their park. And then we spoke with Steve Gomes, who's the director or the president of girls softball, and he said that would be great right there because it's all fenced in to be a beautiful softball pitching area
That's
for the
right.
girls.
There you go.
And I said that sounds like a great idea.
Perfect.
It's a done slam dunk. And then we found out that it was going to stay open. And the reason behind that, there was a lot of quote-unquote political pressure.
And you know
to
where
keep
that
the park
leads
open.
to? You know who that leads to?
Mr. Dracut.
It goes right back to
His
Dracut.
name is on the plaque right on
Fingerprints
outside
are all over. Another disaster that Dracut put together.
But I think overall, Colleen, back to your question, I think he's doing a great job. I think,
the manager's doing a great job.
the manager's
Yeah,
doing
right.
a great job. Although he supported to keep the skateboard park open, that would be one thing I disagree with him.
That
but
would be a fight
The
for me.
economic development thing is to put they have the farms now putting their pages up on the Dracut Town website.
Yeah.
I think that's a great thing. You can see what if I want to buy some strawberries, I can go up there and see what local farms in Dracut can I go buy fresh strawberries from, or fresh
Right.
fruits and vegetables. I think that's a great thing. And then he's actually going out now and speaking to the individual businesses within the town and asking. It's a free service. Why not put your stuff up there so we can have like a one place to go to see all the businesses, what they offer, what the prices are. I think it's a great thing, and I think it's going to bring a lot of business into town. So
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of other things too. I know, just from hearing through the grapevine, some of the stuff that they're trying to do. I mean,
we've got a top donut going in
unbelievable.
right down the street.
It would
here.
be a sad day if this guy leaves
Yeah, I
sooner
agree.
than he should. Now, do I believe he should be here for 20 years? Absolutely not. If he's here for 20 years, he
think
needs
he'll
to see a
retire.
psychiatrist
I think he'll
because
be retiring.
he's not very much of a go-getter for his own his own personal growth. He needs to do something here and move on. I'd say a nice 5 to 8 years and then move on. You should be ready for a new job.
And then another thing that I know that a lot of citizens that I've spoken to who've spoken to the town manager, one thing we need here is gas stations. There's a lot over here,
Yep.
but on my side of town, in East Dracut, there's
Nothing.
There's nothing.
Well, you have one coming.
So we have one coming in over on Broadway Road,
Right.
which is going to be great. I think that's a great
That's
thing.
a great
and
addition,
the
a
town
great
manager
spot
had
for
a huge hand in bringing that, getting that thing in here.
And you know what makes me cringe is when somebody will knock him for using the tax incentives to bring somebody to what's the word I'm looking for? To encourage them to come into town, using a tax incentive, because you don't have any taxes coming in now, but you will have taxes coming in, even though you're giving them a break, right? Plus, if you get something like the gas station, you're going to have there's going to be a little bit of an eatery or some kind of a restaurant attached to that, from what I understand. That alone is 2 taxes. You have the property tax and the meals tax, and the meals tax is a big thing for the town to be able to. It's a service you're paying for, and we're getting something. The
John,
town's
if you
getting
were
something
selectman,
back.
would you support an increase in the meals tax?
I didn't. I
did?
didn't support it when I was on the board of selectmen, and I wouldn't support it now.
Okay.
But I think it's a good thing. It's a mixed emotion for me.
Right.
It's a tax that I wouldn't vote for.
I don't think I don't think the average person even notices that.
You don't
meals
notice
tax,
it,
but
I don't notice it myself, and my town has a meals tax too, and it's good. It's kind of like your community preservation committee, like Community Preservation Act. That's a tax I did support because I think it does good things, and you can use that money for great things.
Let's speak really quickly about the CPA, because as we spoke about, the town is in a financial, I wouldn't say crisis, but we're short on money for
Always, yeah.
for the police, the fire, the DPW, the school. Obviously, the school is one of the big ones. But is it time to look at the CPA? I think they have over $7 million. I forget the last number, but they have several millions of dollars in the fund, and we've done a lot of projects. I'm not saying
Yep.
CPA is not a good thing.
Yep.
It's obviously a good thing. But at what point do you is it 100 million? What's the number you get to where you say, okay, we've put in enough money for the CPA? I don't know what that is.
I'm going to give you
but
a resounding no on that one. I would
Okay.
not touch CPA.
Would you
CPC.
drop the percentage?
I
Would
wouldn't
you
drop
consider it. No?
It's so minute as it is. It's so small as it is. And the benefit that you get from it is so large. I would not do it, because remember, these are dollars now that, since CPC has been expanded, that you can use to rehab existing playgrounds and parks. Money that we do not have.
And matching money from the
And
state.
What is that? Back in the day, it was like 100%, then it went to 50.
Yeah,
and I don't know
it
what
went
is.
down, but now we're still not a lot of communities, not a majority of communities even have the CPC.
That's right.
So you're still talking about a sum of money that maybe 130 or so communities are splitting up.
It's 25% return on your money.
But
you get 25%.
My point, I guess my point is, and I'll ask Phil to end this topic, but does it get to a point where you have so much money in there that
Nope.
No, because again, you can use it for open space, including recreation. There's historical preservation, and then there's
housing.
affordable housing. So I mean, those are three components within the town that will always be needed. I mean, when they were setting up essentially the mandate of where the money was going to, the town has essentially established that they want 80% to go to open space, 10% that's required for historical, and 10% required for housing. And when I was on the board, I wanted to keep it at essentially the 10, 10, 10, and 70 at the discretion of the board. Because my argument was, if there was a project that came into town for housing that could, if you spent a little money from CPC and it took care of a lion's share of the affordable housing in town, why wouldn't you want to do it? And the way we have it set up right now, we can't, because we've established that only 10% will go to housing. So there's always something to spend. There's always something that it can go towards that would be a good project. So I would maintain it the way it is.
Remember, Cordy, the number there, the $8 million, really isn't $8 million because some of that is committed. It's being used as leverage to borrow money to complete projects, to complete large projects. My town of Abington, where I live now, just voted in CPC last year.
Wow.
So they haven't even, they're just establishing it. And I don't understand how a town like that, a small town of 15,000 people with a few farms and open space, hadn't had it a long time ago.
Hey, Colleen, do you know about the Beaverbrook property? Can you give us an update? Do you know much
I
about it?
do know that the committee met the other night because we were meeting at the Boulay Park meeting and we took their spot. But I know I've grown up in this community. It's a great farm, and I know that we're talking about potentially doing something for the Foundation for a Better Dracut on that in the spring, if we can work it out. So I don't know the specifics of what's going on right now, but it is.
I'm interested to see what that. I think that would be a great place to maybe have the fireworks or have a gazebo there.
Yeah.
And, bands plays.
We're actually not to take away from Old Home Day, but we're actually hoping to be able to do an old-fashioned fair there, and do the tugs of war and things that we did as kids. Let the kids see it, and maybe a farmers market at the same time. Just an old-fashioned fair. So, and have it benefit the Foundation for a Better Dracut, which is the group that Phil's on, that Tammy and I were able to start with some other great people, and we're moving forward. That's another thing. We've got a fundraiser. Hopefully, it's also going to happen in January of I'll announce it today, a murder mystery dinner like we had done years ago for the library.
Oh, good.
And Jim Duggan has already agreed to be one of the celebrity actors, as has
Can
Steven.
John be on? He's the guy that gets killed.
I would have, yeah. And Warren Shaw would be the perpetrator.
Steven Stone has actually agreed as well. So the superintendent of schools has agreed to be one of the actors as well. And Linda Truval, Dr. Linda Truval.
Do you have a date set for that?
No, not yet.
Okay.
We're talking about that Monday night. Dr. Linda Truval has agreed to produce it as she did for the library twice.
Well, that sounds great.
It's a lot of fun, and it's a good fundraiser, and it's showing one Dracut. So
That's great. All right, so we're down, I think, about 10 minutes
We got
left.
about
John,
9 minutes
So
and
let's
30
move
seconds.
to national politics. And I'm going to start with Mr. Zimney because both him and I are huge Trump
people.
Trump people.
Absolutely.
So
And this is where we're going to part from Colleen rather quickly.
but we looked in the polls about a month ago.
I
Hillary was
sick to
leading
my
by
stomach.
double digits. And now I just saw the latest one this morning, and it was like 2 or 3%. So he's cut it down to like 2 or 3%.
Yeah,
So
he's in a lot of some of the polls now. He is coming. He's
actually leading.
He's leading.
Yes.
And some of the problems that the Hillary people will start talking about right away is the Electoral College and those states and the battleground states. The key to that whole thing is there's still a battle going on. There's no deal been closed by the voters. I think it's a very fluid situation and every day things change, but I think Donald has done a good job I think the new people that he's brought on has brought him back to
Back a
where he
little,
should
right.
be, and he's come across a lot more presidential, and he's become a lot more temperamental to the whole situation of immigrations and all that stuff. And I'm a big proposer, a big supporter of closing that border down and starting from scratch, because they are coming to our country and they're trying to chop our heads off.
Do you think
we need to be careful?
Do you think that Trump can really get rid of
Yes.
11 million or whatever it is? What, 20
No,
million,
I don't.
whatever
I
it
don't
is?
think. I don't think he knows. I don't think he thinks that's realistic. And he said that. I think he said that it has to be through a process. And you talk about what do you call it? Committees going out and rounding up people. That's not what's going to happen.
I think
But-
what's going to happen. I think this is. I don't know why we wouldn't do it. If you're an illegal immigrant and you break the law, you
That's right,
should
exactly.
be deported. You shouldn't be left back on the
The
street.
bottom line is, we don't want to say the word illegal because it's not politically correct. We have to be careful of what we say on that. It is illegal. When a drug dealer breaks into your house to steal your money, it's illegal. He's a drug dealer. It's
He's not an
Be what it is.
He's not an undocumented resident.
He's not. He's, right, exactly. It's such baloney. I mean, our immigration policy has always been grounded in protecting our citizenry and our country, protecting us. We open borders. They do not want to protect us. It's obvious they don't want to protect us. Hillary Clinton wants to open the borders up and make it easier to come in. No, I mean, when I was a kid, you had to sponsor somebody to come in. My forefathers had to be sponsored to come in, and then you couldn't be a drain on the community by being on welfare or EBT cards or whatever else. But yeah, I'm a big supporter of Donald Trump.
Colleen, I'm
She's
assuming
a
you're
Hillary. She's
supporting
going to be a
Hillary.
Hillary person. No
So I'll
question.
give you a few minutes to talk about.
I think
Louden up those engines there. No, go ahead.
I think, I'm concerned about Donald Trump's temperament.
That's the party line, by the way.
No, well, I mean, he has said some odd things and done some odd things, but I'm not a huge fan of Hillary Clinton. I think I stand with a lot of people in the fact that we wish we had a third person that was is this the best that we can get? And
I say Colleen Gary.
I'd be for calling
Colleen,
Gary.
yeah.
As far as Hillary is concerned, just go watch Clinton Cash. Go watch Clinton Cash. It's all about them. And if Hillary becomes the president, she'll be there for 8 years. We know that. And then you'll be facing a Chelsea Clinton candidacy somewhere in the country as a senator, and then she'll run for president at some point. It's just a dynasty that they want to perpetuate. I mean, it's Bill Clinton, who I voted for and who I respected when he was president, who, by the way, wanted to close the borders when he was president.
Exactly.
And
But
make
that
America
wasn't
great again.
But that wasn't racist back then. That wasn't racist back then. And now you got him saying it's all racist and stuff. But the bottom line is that I think that enough with the Clintons, enough with the Bushes. Let's try Donald Trump.
well,
If
we
he
did
doesn't-
try Obama, and that didn't work.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I agree with you on that. You're a Democrat saying that?
So Phil, I want you to
Honest to
chime in
God.
on what your thoughts are on the.
When
presidential
people
race.
ask me, I generally say I'm being asked to shoot myself in the foot, the right foot or the left foot, but I have to be shot in the foot. And if I refuse, somebody else will shoot me in the foot.
Yeah.
So neither one is a candidate that I really am overwhelmed by.
So are you undecided still?
No. I mean, overall, I think
Which foot
I
are
would,
you gonna
I
shoot?
would I would be shooting myself in the Trump foot at this particular point.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
I get the whole thing about the rhetoric and people not liking what he says. I think he can tone that down.
But will he?
I
That's
think
my
I think he
concern.
will. I think
He
he's,
will.
He of course, I will agree, is a showman, and he's
No
been
question.
doing things for effect. And it has been getting him more press than he could ever pay for.
Right.
So he is very effective in that regard. And I know as a businessman, he can put the right people in the right seats on the bus.
That's the key.
And I know he will rely on that. So again, in that regard, I think he'll get a good staff behind him, pick the right secretaries that he needs. So overall, I guess it's the right foot that I'm planning to shoot myself in.
If he doesn't succeed, I'll be the first to say enough. Get him out and get somebody else in.
My concern is, and I've seen it with a Mitt Romney as an executive coming into the governor's seat, and Deval Patrick as an executive coming into the president, I
Yeah,
screwed
no,
that
God
one, governor's seat. And there's a point where the business executives don't understand that you can't fire Congress. You have to work with them. And that's my concern, is putting in a business executive into the executive office of president, is that they don't understand government and the way that the balance of powers. They think they have the power, all of it, ultimate, and there's a concern there that they have to be able to work with people. You can't just fire Congress.
But you know, that's really
disagree.
no different than a developer going in front of a planning board and saying, this is what I want to put up, and I'm going to do it no matter what you say.
Right.
Of course, the planning board can say no. So they know how to work with somebody like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I'll
Selectman
disagree.
Distriaris is
I'll
here.
disagree with Colleen on that businessman stand, because I think that he's successful because he knows, like you said, putting people in places that are going to make him look better and make the country look better and make the right decisions for the country. And I think that you will find that once Donald is the president, the art of the deal will be brought to a whole new level, because he will be able to get Congress to work with him and him work with
So
Congress.
why isn't he releasing his taxes?
Well, you know,
Being audited.
why doesn't she release her emails?
They're public.
You know,
They're-
it's ridiculous. First of all, I don't think the taxes make a difference, and it doesn't bother me, and I don't think the average American doesn't care. I think that's an issue similar to her saying the sexist and feminist comments that now they're going to try to turn this all into a sex thing, that it's we're against women because we're with Donald, or
Right.
we're fascists because
Do
we're with
you
Donald,
think-
or
do-
we're Nazis because those are insulting
If-
comments as
If,
far as I'm concerned.
if as a multimillionaire, he was paying minimal
I hope he
taxes,
was. I hope he was.
you would be
Yeah,
agreeing with that?
absolutely. If by using the current tax code to his advantage, absolutely. That's what makes him a good businessman. That's what, and everybody uses it. We have 2 minutes, Corey.
Yeah, so
And
we'll have
but
to close the
this
point
is great,
there.
great conversation, though. We'd love to do this again.
I want to thank my guest today, Phil Tebow, for taking a respite from his hiatus and joining us today. Colleen, thank you
you.
so much for being on
Thank
the show.
you.
John, don't be a
It's a
stranger.
pleasure. It's a pleasure. I had
You,
fun.
you still
again.
wouldn't. You still wouldn't.
There's my good friend Mary Gale.
Yeah.
Mary Gale, George Justeleris, who it's his birthday today. Happy
happy
birthday,
birthday,
George.
George.
And where's the selectman? Where did the selectman
She's
Tammy
hiding
go?
from you.
But Joe,
one of my favorite selectmen.
John, don't be a stranger. We want to have you on the show
Well,
whenever you're ready to
you
come
never
back.
know. One of those developments, you might see a Zimini. I don't know. We'll see.
But remember, folks at home, only you can make changes that we're talking about today. So remember in November when it's time to vote,
Make
talk to your
America great
friends,
again.
Make America great again. Talk to your friends. Make sure discuss these topics and get out there and vote, because by voting is the only way you can make change.
And we made it through without any mountain man
Man.
baloney.
And as always, stay connected. Thanks for joining us.
Bye, Dracut.